Today we're meeting with Coach Larry Warshawsky, a former coach at Millersville, to learn about his memories and capture the history of the event. So Larry, what brought you to Millersville?
What got me to Millersville?
Yeah.
I was looking for a job.
Where did you come? Where'd you come from?
I wanted to coach full time, and I had coached a couple of seasons before at Mansfield.
Mm-hmm.
And then I decided I want to coach all the time, and I was going to several different schools to talk to coaches and so on and so forth, with hopes that I could be an assistant coach or something like that. And that it never really worked out. And then Millersville came along, and I got right in. And all of that stuff that I wanted to do, I could do at Millersville.
What did you coach at Mansfield? What sports?
At Mansfield, football.
Okay.
That's all I coached at Mansfield.
All right.
And I was teaching in a school in Corning, New York.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to drive down to Mansfield every day for coaching.
That's a pretty good drive. That's, what is that, an hour and a half or over an hour?
No, well, it's close to an hour.
Okay.
Yeah. Besides the fact that you're in two different states and the deer crossing, there's a lot of deer over there.
So when you came to Millersville, were you coaching track or did you coach something else as well?
My first year at Millersville, I coached baseball.
Oh, okay. When did you come over and start and coach track? Was that your second year?
I think so, something like that. Yeah.
Had you coached track previously in your history?
In high school.
High school,
Yeah.
okay. All right.
Yeah. And there's a world of difference between high school.
Uh-huh,
Yeah.
yep. And then how long did you coach at Millersville?
How long?
Yeah, how many?
It's been 30-something years.
Wow, okay.
And I'm still coaching, just about.
You came into Millersville around 1969, 1970.
Yeah.
What was it? Tell us about the school, the size. What were some things going on about the culture of the university at that time?
Well, it was, a school for teachers, mainly. Most of the people that went to Millersville or schools in that line were going to be teachers. And then we came in and we started recruiting. And that started going here and there and everything else with the recruiting thing. And most of my Christmas vacation was spent on the road recruiting.
So tell me about what did recruiting involve for you? Like what, were you giving scholarships or?
No. We were recruiting people and we weren't giving them anything except admission to the school.
Was that typical? Is that the same thing most other schools that you were competing
It's
against?
entirely possible.
Yeah.
It's entirely possible.
And were you able to recruit with just the promise of admission?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We had some good athletes.
What area did you recruit from?
The coal region, a lot there, Western PA, and over around Philadelphia, those schools. And I didn't have a Christmas vacation really because I was recruiting. So that was my Christmas vacation. I had a state car, and I could drive around and recruit. And it was crazy in a sense.
Did you also get some walk-ons, kids that just
Yeah,
came out for the team?
yeah.
How large was the team about usually?
Oh,
about?
at that time, I would say it was closing in on 60 people.
Wow. So you also did not need to do cuts. You could keep anyone out for the team that you felt
If they went to practice, they'd be in the meets.
Okay.
That's what it was. But in spite of that, how many All-Americans did we have over the years? One hell of a lot of them.
Yep.
Yeah. And we'd go out wherever nationals were. We'd go out to California one time. We took them all the way out to California. And, you know, that's what we had no money. and when you're bucking football, getting money with track, who gives a damn?
Right. Yep.
And I would be making phone calls at nighttime, be home in the house, and I'd start calling up these different people that I was trying to recruit. And that's how I spent my evenings for a while.
Right. Right.
And how I ever got anyone with that, I don't know, but we did. And we had some damn good athletes, you know. And but it was a chore.
Larry, most of your career, Millersville was NC2A Division III,
Yeah.
and then eventually moved over to Division II.
Yeah.
Started at Division II, went to III, and then
Yeah.
went back to II later. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. In a outdoor season, did you have dual meets? How was the schedule set up?
Well, the schedule was set up by who would run with us.
Yep. But it was mostly dual meets?
Mostly state schools.
Uh-huh.
But we'd go to meets wherever we could get into them.
And you also had some indoor meets as well.
We had a few indoor meets.
And was that a formal or informal program, really?
It wasn't formal for a while, and then I forget how I got the idea of talking to the president, and I wrote a letter on that X number of students that we recruit for track are students at the school.
With indoors, though, again, it was just a pickup schedule of where you could go.
It was, exactly. Whoever would let us get into a meet that had an indoor track.
You also saw some changes in facilities in your time there, going from a cinder track when you started, right?
Yeah.
And
Getting to a good track.
yeah, good artificial track. That was during your time that the first one was installed. Is that
Yeah.
right? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Who were some of the top schools that you competed against in the conference? Who were the key names in track and field?
East Stroudsburg was tough. East Stroudsburg was tough. We didn't compete that much against Westchester at the time, fortunately. That gave us a breather. But that was it. East Stroudsburg they had a good program going. And of course, some of these schools could give financial aid. We never had financial aid, if I remember correctly. I couldn't say I'll give you a waiver on your tuition. Just couldn't do it. And then I'd go home at night and I'd start making phone calls to some of these people that I had visited with and try and recruit to my phone. And some of them turned out to be All-Americans.
Now, Larry, you talked about some of the All-Americans. Did they come in as exceptional athletes, or were some of them individuals you developed or the coaches developed?
They were good athletes, but mostly they didn't have great coaching.
In high school?
In high school.
Okay. Who were some of the people on your staff, the assistant coaches?
Well, Cy was an assistant coach for me.
Right. and actually, in your first year, you were the assistant to him? Is that right?
Yeah.
And then you guys switched roles.
I don't know how it came about, but it did.
Uh-huh. Okay. You decided, obviously, to stay at Millersville for many years.
Yeah.
What was the attraction for you as a coach or as a professor that caused you to want to stay there?
I couldn't get another job. That was the most thing. I knew I had a job.
Right.
Yeah. It was a battle.
Now, Larry, when you were there as a coach,
Yeah.
you also were a professor. You taught
Yeah.
classes as well.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
And how many classes would you teach in a semester?
Probably about 5 or so.
Okay. Along with being a full-time coach?
Yeah.
Okay. And I asked that
The full-time coach was our choice, Cy's and my choice. We wanted to be a full-time coach. And so we turned it into a full-time coaching position. But it wasn't mandated by anyone. We didn't get extra pay or anything like that. We just did it because we wanted to do it and have a good program. And I think we did.
When you think about your time coaching, are there any significant memories you have about coaching, things that you're proud of, anything in particular?
That's a tough question. I'm proud that we had so many All-Americans. If they went out to nationals and ran at a meet there and placed, they were All-Americans. I had quite a few. When you think in terms of some of the other schools in our division that had All-Americans, they were given scholarships of one sort or another. We didn't have it. We had no money we could give away. It was, I'd be talking to a guy, and he's got somebody else talking to him from another school, and they're giving away money. And we're giving them, hey, we'll coach you.
Right.
It was.
And among those All-Americans, they were in a variety of events.
Yeah.
Javelin, discus,
Yeah.
10,000 meters,
Yeah.
sprints. So it wasn't just 1 or 2 events. You had
No.
quite a distribution over the years.
We
is that
sure
right?
did. We sure did. Especially with javelin.
Yes.
Especially with javelin. We had a guy that could have been All-American in the javelin.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I think he was.
He was, yep. That be Bill Wolf?
Yep.
Bill Wolf was national champion, I believe, in the javelin in 1979.
Not a bad thing.
No.
Actually, Larry, you were coaching at Millersville there are two national champions in track, and you were there for both, Carl
Yeah.
Bivens and Bill Wolf. Is that right?
Yeah.
Do you have any idea, any memory of what prompted them to come, why they chose Millersville?
I bullshitted them. No, I told them it was a good school. Basically, it was a good academic school.
Okay.
And that's what I would try and sell them on if they were smart. If they weren't smart, I'd tell them something else. but they would get a good education at Millersville.
Okay. Good.
So your record as a head track coach
Yeah.
was 78 wins, 17 losses, and 1 tie, which equates to a winning percentage of about 82%, which is extremely impressive. So what do you attribute that successful record to?
Me going out at Christmas time and recruiting.
Well, and
A lot
that's,
of them.
you obviously were a very successful recruiter,
Yeah.
but a lot of times when you brought athletes to Millersville, like you said, they weren't necessarily exceptional at that time.
Yeah.
But what do you think it was about the program that just developed so many exceptional athletes and All-Americans and even national champions?
I never thought of that. It's just that we did the best job and we sacrificed ourselves. Late, no dinners or going home and then cooking dinner or such like that for my brother. Or, you know, it's just, it was just a certain amount of luck, and maybe it was that I looked for a certain personality for that kid that as a runner.
I think it's a testament to your recruiting and your coaching, because somebody could maybe be lucky for a season or two, but for 11 seasons to have an 82% winning percentage, obviously there was something that you were doing that was successful. Was there a specialty that you had as a head track coach? Are there certain events that you keyed on?
I couldn't identify anything particularly,
Okay.
except that they would get a good education at Millersville. It was a good academic school. And I wouldn't force them into missing practice. This is when we have practice, you have to be there. And
Larry,
fortunately, it's from self-motivation themselves, the athletes. They were good people.
No, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but don't you also think that part of it was the culture, that every student who participated got your attention or one of the other coaches' attention, no matter what their skill was?
Yeah.
Everybody was given an opportunity to compete.
Yeah.
They were encouraged, and it was a positive environment. It was
Yeah.
it was a group that not only did the coaches make it, but the team
Yeah.
created a culture that
Yeah.
they enjoyed.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
with that.
And in recruiting, we fed on that.
So every time period has different challenges.
Yeah.
Back in your days, other than just the challenge of coaching, what other challenges were there being a coach?
Academics. Were they eligible?
I suspect having a good academic reputation for the university
Yes.
created a challenge for the
Yeah.
students then.
I fed off of that. That we were a good academic school. And some kids, you didn't bother with that because they were jerks anyway.
Right.
So the ones that wanted a good education, I could talk to. The other ones, you couldn't sell them on anything because they were often never land.
Right.
Yeah.
Larry, what about money, funding? We'll start with, did you get enough funding to go to meets and uniforms and equipment? Was all that provided to meet your basic needs?
Well, I would say we had money for uniforms. We had free vehicles that we could take to meets. And I picked up a few speeding tickets on on the way. But no, it was tough because some of these other schools were giving money,
Mm-hmm.
and we were beating them in the long run.
Yep.
Do you remember how your training methods changed over the years?
I didn't know they changed. I would go to clinics and such like that and pick up little things here. I went to University of Illinois for summer for my master's degree, and I got it. And Illinois was a good school. Good athletes, damn good athletes. And I would kind of see them all the time and talk to them what they were doing and how they were doing it. And then I would pass that on to the high school kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So if your high moment as a coach was the All-Americans and the national champions,
Yeah.
was there a low moment that you remember in your coaching career?
Yeah, my coaching career. I don't know. You had to, if any low moments, you had to fight through. You had to disregard them and find something that would attract the kid to go to your school, whatever it happened to be. Academically, programs, whatever. Millersville was a good academic school. And if I went after a dunce, forget it. If I went after a good school, a good academic student, I could feed off of the reputation of Millersville as being a good school.
So in your tenure at Millersville, which spanned 30 years, did you notice a change in students over that time?
Notice what?
A change in students at all?
If I did, I ignored it. And I would go ahead and do what I wanted to do in whatever fashion it was.
How about with the administration during that time
The
period?
administration, by and large, was very little help. We had to forget about the administration and recruit them as they were. We tried to go after good students, and we would tell them that Millersville was a good academic school.
So you were an educator as well. What subjects did you teach?
Health.
Health. What I was surprised at was how many roles you played at Millersville. So when you first came to Millersville, I believe it was 1969, you were one of the assistant baseball coaches.
Yeah.
And then I believe the next year you were on the football coaching staff.
Yeah.
Tell me about your football coaching career.
Well, basically, I was a football coach. And to a large degree, I think those things that I emphasized as a football coach, I emphasized there too.
Do you remember how long you coached football?
That was about 20 years or so.
Oh, is that right?
Because I coached at a couple different schools.
Okay. How about at Millersville specifically? Do you remember?
I think I coached there as a head coach probably about 20 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you coached baseball, you coached football,
Yeah.
you coached track,
Yeah.
you coached cross country.
Yeah.
Um,
Not too much on cross country, but I had some good distance runners.
so I think, and I was looking at your books, and I think it said that you were the cross country coach 74, 75, 76 era.
Yeah.
What made you stop coaching cross country? Do you remember? Okay. So that you were
I
all.
look for good distance runners.
Yeah.
That's all.
Mm-hmm. So you
Okay.
had an affiliation with a group called the Cinderellas. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Vaguely, I do.
Can you explain what the Cinderellas were?
They were co-eds that were interested in track.
Is it kind of, was it like a booster
Yeah,
club, Tom?
at that point, there was no women's track and field
No.
at Millersville.
No, it wasn't.
And with any track meet, there's always a need to pull tape or rake sand or help time. And they would come out and help at meets.
Yeah.
And they would also help at practice. They would time intervals and just
Yeah.
be kind of team managers and support for the program.
Yeah.
There is a picture in the 1974 Millersville yearbook of the Cinderellas with you in it, so I knew you had some kind of an affiliation with them.
Yeah.
You were also a advisor to the Sigma Phi Delta sorority.
Yeah.
How did you get involved with that?
I have no idea. They came in and asked me they needed an advisor because there was some problems they were having, and they asked me. I said, "Oh, sure, all right, why not?" And I was advisor for a sorority.
Did you have any time for yourself? That's quite a number of roles you played.
Hey, you have to be flexible, really. You have to be flexible. If you're a hardliner in one direction or another, you couldn't do that. It would go against your principles. And I felt that I would try and be flexible and suit whatever I needed to the athlete. And however I did it, I couldn't say. It was all tuition, stuff like that. And but one thing I would say, I never lied for the kids. I never lied for my athletes.
That's probably why you were so respected, that you were just genuine and told the truth. So what made you step down from your career at Millersville? Just time to retire?
I guess so. Yeah.
Do you remember what year that was?
Then I retired?
Yeah.
I don't know, but it was over 20 years ago.
Okay.
Larry, one of the memories I have, you having been my coach, back in 1973, we took what would have been the first spring trip down south.
Oh, yeah.
And
Forgot about that.
and I think both the team and you played very different roles in that the team wanted to go, and they raised all the money through fundraising.
Yeah.
But you, on the other hand, also had some connections and were able to make some arrangements that it could be very low cost.
Largely, the connections I made was I was working on my master's degree from University of Illinois, and it was through those connections and such like that that came.
And they enabled you to arrange free lodging at different universities.
Yep. I know one time we took a trip with the whole team there, and we had free lodging and everything else. All we had to do was run a meet with them. And we did.
Right. And that was at NC-A&T.
Huh?
That was at North Carolina A&T.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll run a meet. Hell, why not? You know, it's another workout.
Yep.
You had to improvise these things. And
So-
it wasn't easy.
In your role as an educator, what would you say was, do you have a most memorable moment of your role as an educator?
My most memorable moments, I would say, were that I did emphasize within myself that I was an educator, that these weren't just slaves that ran and threw and did whatever they did, that my job was as such. I tried to keep a high standard of, I don't know whether I did or not, but I tried to academically.
So you taught, do you remember how many years you actually taught as opposed to coach?
I did what?
Do you remember how many years you actually taught classes?
At Millersville?
Yeah. I was 20-something years.
Okay. Did you prefer coaching or teaching?
I prefer coaching because the people that went out for the sport went out because they wanted to go out, not because they were required to.
Makes a difference.
Yeah.
What other memories do you have that we didn't cover that you'd like to share?
Oh, gosh. Just that I tried to relate to the athlete, not as a method of me getting better performances, but I tried to relate in that I wanted them to be good students. They were, as far as I'm concerned, basically I recruited and coached academic students. And that was on my mind, the profession of coaching. And I got that, I think, somehow or other I got it from Sprinklr College, which was a strong academic, strong coaching school. But
You had mentioned earlier that there was no scholarship money that was available. Was that in the early days, or was that throughout your tenure as a coach?
throughout my tenure as a coach.
Wow. That's impressive to have a successful record like that and the number of All-Americans and national champions without $1 scholarship money. You had mentioned how you built a culture, which was true, like Tom was alluding to. I mean, when I was in high school and I wanted to run in college, I mean, there was only one college, in my opinion, to go to if you wanted to excel, and that was Millersville. So you just did a fantastic job in building the culture because, again, like you said, it wasn't just the coaching staff, it was the athletes as well. And that's extremely difficult to do with males of college age, to build a positive culture like that.
Yeah.
So that's a testament to your coaching ability.
Well, I guess so. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other memories that you have that we haven't talked about that we should capture?
I love my job.
It's obvious.
I love my job.
If you had the opportunity to go back and be very young again and choose a career, do you think you would choose a similar career?
Probably. Probably.
Okay.
Do you miss coaching?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, Larry,
I miss coaching from the standpoint of my fellow other coaches, opponent coaches and such like that. Got a good relationship with the other coaches, and that was important to me. I don't care if they came from Timbuktu, you know, they were coaches and I could relate to them.
okay. Larry, well, thank you for spending the time with us this morning. It was great to hear your stories, and those that get to see our video in times to come, I'm sure will appreciate your contribution and also have respect for what you were able to achieve. So thank you.
Thank you.